everybody, my name is Victoria. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a May wrap-up and I finished 5 books in the month of May. I'm slightly disappointed in myself because I really intended to finish 7, but I didn't get to all 7 books, but that's okay. We're just onward and upward from here. So let's go ahead and talk about the books. Fair warning, most of these books are books in the middle of a series, so this wrap-up might be a little bit difficult for me to do. So I'm going to try my best not to give any spoilers, although all but one of these books are part of a series and most of them are like smack dab in the middle of a series. So I'm going to do my best to give you some information about it without being spoilery, so wish me luck. The first book I finished in May was Anne's House of Dreams by Montgomery. This is part of a read-along for the Anne of Green Gables series that's happening on BookTube here, and it's being hosted by Tia and Amanda, and I'll link that info down below just in case you want to sneak in. We're kind of inching our way towards the end of the series, but hey, I don't know, maybe you can read super fast and you want to try and catch up. So now that we're on book 5, I am seeing that these books kind of fall into a formula, or at least like the last couple have. There's always these side characters that Anne meets in whatever stage life she's in, and she comes into their life, helps them with whatever problems they have, and then moves on to the next stage of her life, and then there seem to be more side characters. So we have a little cast of side characters in this book who I really actually enjoyed for the most part. There was one side character who I just kind of wanted to smack her because she was being kind of annoying. But I did like this book a little bit more, I think, than the 4th book. I felt like the 4th book had a ton of side characters and a lot of them were really similar to each other, whereas at least we had a little bit of a smaller group of people to follow in this. In this book, Anne is really starting to establish her own life and coming into womanhood and adulthood and learning what it is to be an adult. And I just found a lot of this to be really just resonating with my own age bracket, and I felt like I could really relate to Anne in a lot of things in her experiences because I am also going through a kind of similar life phase as Anne. And while Anne has some really hard things that happen to her in this book, she doesn't let it make her bitter. She goes on with her life, and I felt like Montgomery did a really good job of showing us that she's still the same Anne. She's just growing up, and I really think that's a sweet and kind of bittersweet way actually to continue a series if you're following the same character, is that we're watching her grow up as we go through the series, and we also are growing up ourselves and are all in different life stages, and I think it just helps make Anne really relatable, and I really like this one. This is definitely a sadder volume, I would say, than some of the previous ones. This one definitely deals with some heavier topics. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, and while there is some humor, it's definitely a little bit more on the somber side, kind of more somber and reflective. So I liked it. It was just different. I'm giving this one 4 stars, and I'm excited to see what happens to Anne as we continue. We're very close to the end. We're on book 6, so we're on the tail end of the series. I'm really glad that Tia and Amanda decided to host this event because I don't know if I would have gotten around to this sooner rather than later, and I'm just really glad that I'm finally reading these books. The next book that I want to talk about today is The Two Towers by JRR Tolkien, and this is part of the Lord of the Read-Along, which is happening and hosted by Krista and Sarah. I also buddy read this with Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf. We've been actually buddy reading the whole series, so we will be also buddy reading the next book too. But this is actually a reread for me. I read it back in, I think, 2011 or so. So it's been a while for me. This is another one that's pretty hard to talk about without being spoilery, but I guess all you need to know is we continue to follow Frodo and Sam and all of their friends and their various adventures. If I say any more than that, you're kind of spoiled for where this book picks up, so I'm going to try not to. Both Naomi and I really enjoyed Merry and Pippin's development as characters in this book. I really like reading about the Ents. The Ents, I think, are some of my favorite characters in Lord of the Rings. I just think they're really interesting. Also, I find them rather comical with their ways of speech and just the way they think differently than humans, and the way they see the world differently. They're just really interesting characters. I think it's interesting to have like trees as characters, and to think, what would a tree think? What would a tree think about what's happening in Middle Earth? In this volume, we delve a little bit more into the humans and their drama and their different politics. That part, I always felt like I didn't really understand it very well, and I do feel like I understand that a lot more in that part of the story. It's just never been super interesting to me in the movies or in the books. I know the humans are important, but for some reason I just don't care about them as much. I care much more about the Hobbit's world and all the strange creatures we meet, and then the humans have their drama, and I don't care as much. Oh, and I care a lot more about the elves too. But I learned a little bit more about the politics between the humans, and I think I picked up a lot more details which I hadn't really paid attention to as much before. So I think that was a good thing upon this reread. Also, a formatting thing that's different with this book is the first half, we are just following Merry and Pippin and some humans and Aragorn, and we are following everyone totally separate from Frodo and Sam. And then we actually don't follow Frodo and Sam until the second half of the book. And so I think that kind of made the first half a little bit slow, because I really, just wanted to catch up with Frodo and Sam and see what they were doing. I still need to rewatch the movie, because I remember the movie did a pretty good job, I think, of weaving the two storylines and weaving the different storylines together so that you were able to follow everybody separately, but you also, knew what was going on as a whole. And I think the movie does a good job of this. In the book, we're just following everyone separately in the first half and then the second half. So you have to read a lot before you get to Frodo and Sam and Gollum. But anyways, this is a masterwork. It is one of my favorite classic books. It's one of my favorite fantasy books. And Lord of the Rings, there's just nothing better than Lord of the Rings. If you haven't picked up Lord of the Rings, you definitely should. Don't let it intimidate you. It has some kind of high language and high writing. I know a lot of people kind of get stuck on that when they're trying to read Lord of the Rings, but if you push through, I think it's really worth doing, and you will definitely have a good grasp for like the foundation of fantasy. And I just think more people should try and read Lord of the Rings and not be scared of it. This book is always 5 stars for me. Lord of the Rings will always be 5 stars. Hands down, that will never change. Next up, I finished The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. I buddy read this with Rainy from Rainy Day Reads, and we had a lot of fun talking about this one together. And we are probably going to take a short break between this one and the last one. We'll probably get to the last book in July, but we are very happy to be most of the way done with Mistborn Era 1. Again, not trying to spoil anything, but this book definitely opens up the world a lot. It opens up the politics. I saw some people kind of complaining about this book being slower, or at least kind of feeling slower, and I can see where they are getting that, because we do spend a lot of time with the characters as the characters are just trying to figure out where do we go next, how do we go forward, and it's a lot of just being in their different heads and kind of seeing things through their eyes as they try to figure it out. And then of course we get some action, a lot more action actually towards the end. There's a lot of different factions that are all warring for power and for different things, so there's a lot of tension that builds up in this book. I was definitely on the edge of my seat a lot of the time. We were introduced to some new characters who I thought were quite compelling and intriguing. I thought the character of Zane was really interesting, and I kind of wished we had a little bit more of Zane. I found him really interesting, and I wanted just to know more about his life. Also, a new favorite character for me was Alrianne. I liked her a lot. You don't like her at first, but you definitely grow to like her a little bit more. I thought that the depth of Elend was really expanded upon, and I enjoyed reading about him and watching him grow. And then Vin also has her own turmoils that she goes through. She definitely grows and learns so much in this book. So I thought this was just a great way of opening the world a bit more, of developing the characters a lot more. It just has some really like heart-wrenching moments, and I can't wait to continue on. I know we're gonna wait a little bit because both me and Rainey have like other projects we're doing, but I'm really excited to see how this series wraps up. I thought the second book was really strong. 5 stars. All right, this is the last book that I have to talk about that's in a series. I have one more book after that, but I am in the middle of Fruits Basket. This is a manga by Natsuki Takaya, and I'm on volume 10 of these beautiful collector's editions. I think these are really gorgeous. They have some like colored illustrations inside also, which are really, really lovely. I can best describe Fruits Basket by, you think it's going to be a light and fluffy series when you start it, and then as you go, it just gets darker and darker and darker. That was something that was a little bit unexpected, is how dark and dramatic these books get. All the characters just have these like very tragic backstories, and you always get a little bit more information in every volume. And these characters, they just have been through a lot, and it's really sad. It looks so cute and fluffy, but it has some serious sad content in it. So that's something that I didn't know until I got towards the end of the series. I believe I have 2 more volumes. As a series, this book follows the Soma family, and the Soma family have magical powers of sorts. They are each a member of the Zodiac, and when they are embraced by the opposite sex, they turn into the animal of the Zodiac that they represent. And it's all about their relationships and their relationships with each other and their backstories and their dramas. And then they meet this young girl named Toru, and she befriends the family and actually moves in with the family, and she kind of looks over them and takes care of them. So this manga is definitely relationship focused. It's all about how the characters are relating to each other, and this one definitely was very sad and is getting much darker, and I'll be curious to see how this series wraps up because I'm hoping it ends happily. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it's going to end happily because everybody's kind of dealing with a lot, so we will see. And the final book that I read in the month of May was A Good Marriage by Kimberly McCreight. This was a Book of the Month pick, and I have only just started doing Book of the Month books, and I was hoping to get a separate book review out for this one, but it just didn't happen, so that's okay. But A Good Marriage is a thriller, domestic thriller, and it's probably more on the legal thriller side. There's definitely a lot of passages where we're following an actual court case and getting the information on a lot of jargon, court jargon, lawyer jargon. So I think it's definitely going to appeal to a legal thriller reader very strongly. And it also has that domestic thriller twist to it as well. So I think it appeals to both of those camps. The basic premise of this book is that we have a young lawyer named Lizzie, and out of the blue she gets a phone call from an old friend named Zach, and Zach is in jail for allegedly murdering his wife, and he claims that he didn't do it, and he calls Lizzie because they were old acquaintances, old friends, and he wants to be represented by her. And so Lizzie says yes, thinking, of course, you know, he didn't kill his wife, no way, I know this guy, he's not a killer. And then as she's working on the case, there's a lot of information that comes up that she didn't know, and sometimes Zach isn't very honest with her. So then it becomes all about us following Lizzie as she uncovers all these little details and makes discoveries and sifts through information, sifts through lies, and it has a lot of twists and turns from there that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So I'm not very experienced in the thriller genre. I've tried a few, and honestly, they've been flops for me. And I'm happy to say that this one was not a flop for me. I think it's definitely not a 5-star book for me. I would give it maybe a 3.5 or 4. If I'm being honest, maybe more of a 3.5, because I do think this book is really well written. It's well crafted. It had me guessing the whole time, and as soon as you think you know something, we get information that thwarts us, And to me, that's a really good thriller. I think that's how they should be. You know, they shouldn't be predictable. You should be on the edge of your seat trying to figure things out along with the characters. And this book really did that well. I do think it's a little bit on the slower side for a long time, but then it hits a point in the book where we just keep getting reveal after reveal after reveal, and it really starts to get interesting from there. But I did think it took a while to build up. It's a little bit more of a slow burn thriller. So depends on what kind of thrillers you like. This one I felt like did take a little while to get going. My next criticisms are really more of a personal taste thing, but there's a trope in this book that I don't love. I see it all the time, and it's just not really a trope I care about. And it's the trope of rich people behaving badly. And I understand that, like, it's fun to watch rich people like fall down and fail and have everything taken away from them. It's interesting to think about what rich people do behind the scenes, prim and proper people who act badly, you know, at home or behind the scenes. It has that kind of trope to it. It's not really a trope that I've ever cared about, so sometimes I just didn't care that much about any of the characters. Another thing that I didn't really know going into this book that I maybe would have liked to know, this might have deterred me from picking it up, but there is some dark sexual content such as rape and also child exploitation. So it doesn't get into details. So there's not like nitty-gritty details or anything, but those are topics that are brought up and explored a little bit. So that was kind of hard to read. Another thing that might turn you off about this book is a pretty large use of profanity. So it just depends on your tolerance for those things. It didn't completely distract from the story by any means, but I noticed it sometimes, and it's just a personal preference thing. So take what you want out of those comments. But I did think this was an entertaining thriller. I enjoyed also how it explored the different marriages of the characters, and we get to kind of see how different marriages function and how a lot of them function very differently and have different communication, and all of them are dysfunctional in some way. So a little bit pessimistic. I don't think we have an example of like a really good, healthy marriage that doesn't have dark secrets in it. So, you know, what kind of thriller would have a happy marriage in it, right? I'm probably looking too deeply into it. It's a thriller written for entertainment. This is why I can't do thrillers, because I get too deep into the details. But hopefully I pick up more thrillers that I like a little bit more. Maybe domestic thrillers are not for me. I think I've tried three. I've tried three now, and I just don't know if they're my taste. I think I'm not giving up though. In fact, if you have any domestic thriller recommendations, I'll take them. You know, I might find something that I like, but I didn't hate this, but it's not a new favorite by any means. So, oh well. Those are all the books that I finished in the month of May. Let me know if you have read any of those, if you have any thoughts about them, if you want to read any of them after hearing me talk about them. I'm sorry so many of them were just middle books in a series. I know it's really hard to talk about those kinds of books in non-spoilery wrap-ups, but hopefully we did okay. And let me know down below also what was your favorite book that you read in the month of May, and if you have any domestic thriller recommendations for me, I'll take those as well. Thanks so much for watching my video today. Be sure to subscribe if you want to keep up with my bookish reading journey and keep reading great books, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.